The next part of this text, Essential Spiritual Advice by the first Dalai Lama, Gendon Drup, is just 2 lines, but packed full of meaning. It says, like me, the countless living beings have been wandering in cyclic existence. That's all it says. There's a lot in there. So what does wandering in cyclic existence mean? What is cyclic existence? So cyclic existence is our 5 aggregates. Okay, this is cyclic existence. Our mind is cyclic existence. Our present mind, mental aggregate, is cyclic existence. Cyclic existence is not the physical place. So it's not an issue of going somewhere else to live, getting out of cyclic existence, getting the air ticket to La La Land, and living there. Because this thing that, that we live in, this body, is itself cyclic existence. So cyclic existence is taking the body and the other aggregates, our 5 aggregates, again and again and again under the influence of ignorance, which produces afflictions, which lead to the creation of polluted karma. So that's what cyclic existence is. Okay? And we've been in cyclic existence beginninglessly. It's not that there was once a pure heavenly realm and everybody was pure, and then something happened and we all wound up in cyclic existence thereafter. Not like that. It's, we each take rebirth due to the ignorance that obscures our own mind stream, and that ignorance has no beginning. Okay. Now many people say, but there has to be a beginning. And I say, why? Why does there have to be a beginning? I know our mind feels more comfortable when we talk about beginnings, but why does there have to be a beginning? Okay. Because if there were a beginning to ignorance, then, and there was something pure before that, then what caused the ignorance to come into existence? If there's a state of purity, there's no cause in it that would make ignorance arise. Okay? So ignorance, each moment of ignorance came from a previous moment of ignorance, and there's no beginning to it. And, you just have to think in terms of like the number line, either way you look on the number line, there's no end, there's no beginning, there's always one more. So we have to expand our mind in that kind of way. Okay? And here when we talk about beginningless ignorance, it's not the ignorance of, buying the wrong stock. Your stock goes down, or voting for the wrong political party or something like that. It's referring to an ignorance that not only clouds the mind and prevents it from seeing the reality, but also this ignorance actively misapprehends reality. Okay? So in the lower philosophical tenet schools, they say that ignorance is just obscuration. In the upper schools, they say, no, it actually misapprehends things. Okay? And so specifically what's being misapprehended is everything arises in dependence on other factors, and the way ignorance grasps things to exist, it thinks that things exist independent of all other factors. Okay? So that's a big problem, because the fundamental way that things exist, we perceive totally the opposite. Okay? And that's why it's called ignorance, because it's the opposite of reality. But we perceive things like that for our whole life and for many lives before that. And it's so ingrained that we don't even realize that we have an ignorant perception. And so that's part of our problem, is we don't even realize that what we're perceiving doesn't exist in the way it appears to us, or in the way we apprehend it. Okay? So this ignorance, especially referring to the self, to the I, when we misapprehend ourselves and think that there's some independent self there that exists without depending on causes and conditions, without depending on parts, without depending on the mind conceiving and labeling it, without depending on existing in a whole framework of other conventionally existent things. This mind that just thinks it's there. Me. No doubt, no question. Me. Independent. Okay. From that mind, then attachment comes, because if there's this concrete me, then, we want it, it's got to be happy, and it's got to get what it wants. So attachment comes. Then anything that interferes with us getting what we want, anger comes. Okay. Then we compare ourselves to what other people have, pride comes, or jealousy comes. Yeah. Then, all sorts of other afflictions come too, just because of this main one of misapprehending how phenomena exist, and most important among those phenomena, how the the I exists, and how the mind, M-I-N-D, mind exists, okay? And so then we have these afflictions, then we do actions. We bully people, we tell people off, we talk behind their back, we lie, we cheat, we flatter, we do all sorts of stuff, okay? And so those actions are what we call polluted karma. They're polluted because they're created under the influence of ignorance. And so something that's polluted, like this, is not going to bring everlasting happiness. It's going to bring continual rebirth and cyclic existence. Okay, with taking more bodies and mind under the influence of ignorance. Okay, and so this has been going on beginninglessly, and it will go on endlessly until we generate the wisdom that realizes the opposite of what ignorance apprehends. Okay, so we might say, well, what's wrong with being born in cyclic existence? It's like, I'm born, I have this body, and it's no big deal, and I'm kind of young and healthy, and okay, I get a cold once in a while, but, samsara is not a problem. I mean, there's so much pleasure to be gotten here. Okay, well, the difficulty with thinking in that way is that no matter how much pleasure you get, there's always aging, sickness, and death. Yeah. And all of our pleasure, all of our scientific discoveries, all our technological advancements, cannot cut aging, sickness, and death. Those are givens. Yeah. And they aren't the thing that brings joy to our hearts, is it? To think I'm going to get old and sick and die. Or I'm in the process of getting old and sick and dying, yeah? And so for that reason, cyclic existence isn't so desirable, yeah? And then also we're not quite sure where we're going to be reborn in a future life. There's different realms of existence according to the actions we create. We're not so certain that we're going to get a very comfortable rebirth or so on in a future life. We could get any kind of rebirth. Yeah. I mean, we see beings in the animal realm right now, and why we may say, oh, the kitties are so sweet, they just sleep all day, ignorance is bliss, if you think about it, that's really not so much bliss, because the kitties still get old and sick and die. Yeah. And then they have us to contend with. And we bug them to death, don't we? Yeah. And they have a good life as kitties. I used to, when I lived in India, one of the things that really got to me is the donkeys. because they use the donkeys to carry the slate and the sand and the concrete whenever they're building something. And these bags, that are draped over the donkey's backs are so heavy, really heavy. And they get filled up, and the donkeys have to stand there, just waiting. It's not like they can load their back and go and dump it. But they have to stand there waiting until everybody's loaded up. And then they start whacking them to get them to move and go somewhere else. And then they take it off, and then they go back and carry another load. And just looking in the eyes of the donkeys, and just, it's like you could see the obscuration in the eyes. There was suffering, physical suffering, but the suffering of not having a clear mind that understands what's going on, and just being completely subject to whatever is happening in your environment without understanding, that really got to me when I would look at the donkeys. And then thinking, what's the guarantee that I won't be reborn as that? And somebody says, well, you're an intelligent human being, blah, 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 blah. But, sometimes we look at it and human beings act more ridiculous than animals do, don't they? Animals kill if they're hungry or threatened. Human beings kill because they feel like it. Just get your gun, get some explosives. It's your second Amendment right. Not to kill, but to have all these things. But all these things, what's the purpose of them? Yeah. So, sometimes human beings act worse than animals. So if we see that, why couldn't what was once, a being in a human mind then take the mental consciousness of an animal if they're acting worse than an animal when they're a human being? It would make sense, wouldn't it? So then just thinking about these different realms of existence, or even within the human realm, the possible places we could be born, or what we could be reborn as, none of this is satisfactory. Yeah. And even you're born in a godly realm with all sorts of sense pleasure deluxe, it doesn't last forever. Yeah. And then you also have the suffering as in your godly realm. Yeah. And they actually say that for these celestial beings, when they realize that they're going to die the week before they die, and they realize that they're going to have to depart from this whole sense pleasure deluxe, blissful, realm, and the only way to go is down, that the torment, the mental torment they suffer in the last week of their life is as great as the beings born in the very, very unfortunate realms. Yeah. So when we think about this, do we have any protection? What are we going to do? It's like you have to do something. And so we turn to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha and take refuge and humbly ask the Buddha for guidance, for teaching. Show me how to get myself and everybody else out of this. Yeah. But it's very important to actually understand what samsara is in order to generate the wish to get out of it. If we don't understand what it is, if we don't have a sense of how terrifying it can be, we'll just kind of drift along and all seems okay. Until the axe falls. Yeah. So, rather than live that way, let's be really attentive and, keep good ethical conduct, develop wisdom, develop concentration, cultivate compassion for everybody else who's in the same boat. and in that way make our life meaningful.